on this computer. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. We might just give everyone a second or two to connect up and join the session. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this, our first webinar as part of the night shift sessions with Mainstreet Australia. My name is Liz Joldeski. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Executive Officer with Mainstreet Australia, and I'm so excited to be facilitating this session tonight. And we're also really proud to be launching this new online program for our members. It's called the Night Shift Sessions, and this is following member feedback for more accessible and current learning and development options for our members. So we do hope you find the series and tonight's session informative, engaging, but also fun and inspirational. And before I continue, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which I'm coming to you from. I'm coming to you from Naarm country, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any First Nations people that might be joining us tonight. I'd also love to hear where you're joining us from and the lands that you're joining us from. So please feel free to pop that in the chat and let us know. Let us know the lands that you're joining us from. And before we get stuck into the topic, just a bit of Zoom housekeeping. We're all over that by now. But if you could please just have a look at renaming yourself if you haven't already done so. Just your first name followed by your organisation name, just so that we know where you're coming from and who you represent. Please do mute yourself if you're not speaking, but feel free to use that chat function and make comments and ask any questions along the way tonight. And finally, please keep those cameras on. We love to see your faces, and it definitely helps with getting connection and engagement over this format that we've all become very accustomed to. So on that note, let's get on to the topic for tonight. So the topic is, how do you run successful events for your Mainstreet? And tonight we're very fortunate. We've got a fantastic panel. So the format is a panel session. I'll introduce our fabulous panelists who you can see they're eagerly waiting there and ready to go. And then we're going to do a bit of a deep dive on some of the key areas around events management for Mainstreets in 2023. What's working well, what's not, and how can we run events that will bring more people and our communities onto our main streets. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our panelists. Firstly, good evening to you, Kelly Harrington from Kelly Harrington Consulting. Kelly is an events management professional with many, many years of experience, and she's done some phenomenal major events, particularly in Melbourne. All of you who live in Melbourne and Victoria will be familiar with these events. There's the Moomba Parade, New Year's Eve activities. She's also done the White Night Festival, Mother's Day Classic, and she's also been involved in running events for the Melbourne Commonwealth Games. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And also we have Georgina Picolis. Many of you would be familiar with Georgina. She's also the president of Mainstreet Australia, but with her other hat, she is the manager of Economy, Design and Place at Wyndham City Council. And she has over 20 years experience in a diverse career that canvassed events management. She started in theatre management, moved into delivering major events across Victoria, some of them with Kelly. And then she moved on into placemaking and activation, where she's been with Wyndham City Council. And as I mentioned, we're also very lucky to have her leading Mainstreet Australia, and she's definitely reset the organisation and set us on the current path that we're on for growth and expansion. Welcome, Georgina.
Thank you, Liz. That was quite an intro. Thank you, and lovely to see
And
everyone's
we also
faces.
have Troy Stutchbury. Troy is with the Sydney Road Brunswick Association. He's a marketing, branding and communications professional, and he's led many, many successful campaigns across consumer events and hospitality. And as I said, he's currently the manager with Sydney Road Brunswick Association, and he leads all of their campaigns and strategies and events. So he's got a lot of current and relevant expertise that he'll be sharing with us tonight. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Okay, well, we are going to get straight into it. But before I do, I'll just put another call out to all of our guests that are on, all of our attendees. Please do feel free to just jump in and make any comments or ask any questions. So I don't want to be the only one talking and posing questions. So this is your chance to get the ear and get the advice of our panelists. So please do jump in with those comments and those questions. So I'm going to start with a big curly one just to get us going. And I think I might throw to you first, Kelly, because you're in the top left-hand corner of my laptop. So Kelly, what's the best event that you've ever delivered? And can you tell us why? What made it so amazing?
Yeah, this was a hard one when this question was posed. So look, I've narrowed it down. I'm going to say Moomba Parade. So
Kelly, you're on mute.
No, I can hear her.
Can everyone else hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a difficult question, but my response is going to be Moomba Parade. So obviously I've worked on a fairly broad spectrum of events, from major events to smaller community delivered events, but Moomba Parade for me kind of sits in the middle in regards to we've got a really nice kind of inclusion with the content. We've worked with a lot of different cultural and community groups, as well as a lot of creatives around Melbourne in regards to the scenic elements. So for me, it ticks all the boxes in regards to community, professional. We're lucky enough to have council and government deliver that event. That's probably my most favourite event, and I'm lucky.
Sorry, everyone, I'm just having some audio issues.
We can hear you.
Sorry, I'll just be 1 sec. Georgie, if I could just ask you just to take over. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Cal, and definitely heard all of it. So Troy, I might throw to you if you're able to give us your, I guess, most proudest delivery moment on an event or an activation.
Absolutely. So for me, I'm keeping it in the realm of Sydney Road Brunswick Association and Sydney Road Brunswick. So for me, it was our vintage ball that we held last year I keep saying 2021, but it's 2022. And that was, we actually held it during Mainstreet Australia week. Nice little plug there. And the purpose of the event was to showcase sustainable shopping on Sydney Road Brunswick. So the idea of the vintage ball was that we asked all of the attendees to go out and buy a frock of some sorts on one of the 13 op vintage or secondhand stores along Sydney Road Brunswick. And then the brief was vintage, so that could be anything and everything. And they all came, and it culminated at a big ball at the Brunswick Ballroom on Sydney Road Brunswick. And we had 210 attendees dressed in vintage finery and a whole bunch of other takes on the vintage look and feel. And we held 3 catwalk competitions for people to walk down, strut their stuff, showcase what they had on. And it was just really, I think the key amazing takeaway from that event was that it brought a whole cross section of the community together. And it was, that was with thanks all to the band. We had a swing band at the ballroom, so it was all very of the era. But it brought a whole bunch of demographics together in a celebration of the single most important thing of being sustainable living, I suppose, and shopping and supporting small business. And it was an evening of great dance and support for Sydney Road Brunswick businesses, and then importantly, the sustainable businesses that we have along Sydney Road Brunswick. So that was my key one.
Fantastic. I'm going to jump in, and there's definitely going to be a question on mishaps and when logistics go wrong during events. So my apologies for the technical glitches. But Georgie, back to you. Were you able to answer that question?
No, I hadn't, but I'm happy to really quickly as well. But great example, Troy. Really like that. I'm going to go a little bit different. I hosted an activation from about 6 years ago in Werribee, where I was sort of told, similar to what Kelly's been doing, could create a white night festival. So off Georgie went and created a bit of an evening festival that was called the Winter Street Party. That's still ongoing now, 6 years on, which is great success. Hugely being every year, more and more businesses are taking part. I've got about 320 businesses down the main street. And I must say the first year we probably kicked off with 10, I think. And that was probably some of the ones that were already open. And we're now, probably on about half the street being opened on that night. But my takeaway was we had this huge blow up lighting installation in the middle of Station Place, which is normally a car park. And I remember standing, and it was a priceless moment. I was standing there with the mayor, and the mayor was like, "This is pretty good. This is great. Lots of community members out enjoying themselves." And this little person, about 7 years old, turned around to his dad and he just went, "This is the best night ever." And I was like, that's why I do what I do, creating that sense of place and creating that, an experience where a child's actually able to say, this is where I live locally, and I'm able to have an experience like this while my parents are, getting some food at the shop and, supporting the local shoe shop. So for me, yeah, it's about giving back, I think.
Fantastic. I love that. And that really leads well into our next question, which is, when you start, how do you actually go about building, concepts for your events with really crystal clear goals and objectives that are going to meet your community's needs and your community's demographics? Like, how do you, what's that process, or what's that beginning and that conceptual piece? Troy, I might start with you first.
Yeah, awesome. So I think, so I'm a stickler for detail. I suppose that's a good thing and a bad thing. Can be detrimental to myself. But I think whenever we start with event concept, especially here for Sydney Road Brunswick, because we're a business association or a traders association, and funding, is broken up throughout the year, and there's not a huge amount of it. So we've got to make sure where we're spending well and spending appropriately. So whenever we're looking to build an event concept, we have our 4 different business segments of Sydney Road Brunswick. So you've got food and entertainment, bridal, retail, and business and health services. And we kind of look at how we can deliver against those different areas of Sydney Road Brunswick, but then also how we can deliver for the precinct as a whole. So one key example, probably easiest as an example, last year we launched a whole bunch of historical walking tours along Sydney Road Brunswick, which we did with the Brunswick Community History Group. And we're actually redoing them again this year because they were so successful last year. But that came from a purpose of wanting to build a stronger integrity and I suppose awareness of the significance of Sydney Road Brunswick and its business past and its historical past. So that was what the purpose that we're trying to get out of it. And then the goals that came from that, we kind of brainstormed and thought, well, how can we do all this? How can we achieve this? And we're looking at what's happening elsewhere in Melbourne and Greater Victoria, and I'd noticed that there was kind of a bit of a focus on historical significance of different areas. There was a big boom of a Instagram page called Old Vintage Melbourne. Some of you are probably already across. I now follow it religiously along with a whole bunch of other historical things. But it really, I suppose, to find a really unique event concept and an event concept that everyone was loving, and it was really feeding the moment of people having that time to sit back and appreciate what was around them. And so then we're like, well, we don't know the information, we don't have the knowledge, we have small parts of that knowledge, we don't have an extensive array. So we looked out to what community groups or what groups are in the area that we can team up with to create, a collaborative project, and found that the Brunswick Community History Group was within our area. And so we reached out to them to join up with them and create this event concept. And over the course of last year, we've been able to build on the integrity and the historical significance of Sydney Road and do it in a consumer fun-friendly way by doing these historical walking tours. So we're not only being able to catalog our amazing past in our history, but also demonstrate it and convey it so we can build on our own integrity and that we can use, for future things to come.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great local example. Kelly, I guess at the other end of the scale, I think White Night is probably, conceptually probably one of the best festivals, one of the most successful, festivals over the last decade or so. Do you know much about the history of that and how that concept came about? I guess now there's so many nighttime, festivals.
Came about the Victorian government obviously went to Nuit Blanche in France. So, and there was 2 people from Now Visit Victoria, which then was Big Major Events, basically bought the rights to effectively re-establish a similar concept in Melbourne. So when the idea was pitched, it went out to tender. That it was a concept of basically having an overnight event and engaging all the major cultural organisations and as many retail organisations as possible for one night for 12 hours. But the actual programming was an open flutter at that point. So we had to basically pitch our ideas to win that contract with the company and the team I was working with at the time. So that was an interesting process. And I think for me, like I obviously sat in the operations side of that I think we had to kind of reverse work it a little bit as far as what we considered success in regards to if we could get 50 retailers to open, if we could get 80% of cultural organisations participating, and then try and sort of fit the creative overlay within what we would measure as success to deliver that event. So again, similar situation to George with winter, it was really no different. It doesn't really matter if you're working on something as large scale as White Night or a street-based festival. We were struggling to get people to stay open. We were struggling to get food trucks to turn up and trade all night because they didn't think anyone would turn up. We were struggling to get suppliers to commit to, being on site for that period of time. So it was an interesting process, given it kind of flipped everything you think about events, for the fact we started at 7 and we're still asking people to be on site, the next morning as well.
Yeah, and that's a question that gets given to Mainstreet Australia a lot, just around, when you're running these events and festivals, that engagement piece, like with local traders and just getting them on board, it's such an important piece to the success. Georgie, I'm wondering if you've got any examples around how you've navigated that, engagement piece, or, getting traders and businesses, on board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just comes back to what many of us do, is walk that pavement, have those conversations and sell the dream. And sometimes it's really hard when it's a new event or a new initiative or a new Mother's Day promotion that you're going to change up that you've never done before, and everyone's like, stick with the same. It really is about believing in it and making sure that you've got the information behind you, that you've got your marketing plan behind you, and you've got strong success rate, that we've trialed something similar to this and we've seen that there's appetite, whether it's in the community or the business. My key one would probably be a lot of consultation, especially when you're doing something on a main street. You want to, rather than do it, it's sort of like build it and they will come. No, consult and they'll get involved. Find out what it is, what do they need. So if it's a food business, the chances are they're going to be open anyway, so don't spend your energy there. But if it's a cafe that might close at 4 o'clock, those are the really difficult conversations. So it's really about selling it and explaining to people, we anticipate, the first year, as we all know, first time events, you don't know what your crowd numbers are going to be. And I know I will hit on this a bit later, but it's about collecting all that data. So any data that you can collect, whether it's crowd attendance, whether it's, testimonials from businesses the next day, you collate all that and you keep it. And when it comes next year, it's such an easier sell.
And I think also from a creative perspective is not actually working against the resources that you've got in the street. So if you've got a good food presence, don't go booking 10 food trucks just because you think you need, a different offering. Like, actually support what you've got on the street and try and program around it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I think also, do you mind? I just want to have a point on that as well. Because I definitely understand it can be hard sometimes to get traders on board, especially when it's something completely new and fresh. There's always never, this will always work kind of thing. It's to every trader, it's a completely different scenario. But what I found sometimes what we normally do is that if we know something's coming up in 6 months that we're going to want to get their support behind, we drip feed it to them over the course of a couple of months. Like we'll go in and have a casual conversation with them, ask how they're going, see what they're doing, read the room a little bit in those scenarios, and slowly we'll feed them the concept over the course of a month or so that when we actually come and need their support, we've done most of the legwork leading up to that point, and it's just selling them the dream that we've kind of created over the past 2 months. Generally what we generally do if it's getting harder to get them on board.
Yeah, that's a great approach, Troy. I love that. The drip feed approach. Love that. So
and keeping them engaged throughout the year as well. So not just, we've got a festival, great, will you stay open? No, like having those initiatives like most of the main streets do, whether they've got a traders association or a chamber of commerce, is, working with them throughout the year. Yes, there's going to be those big picture items where you may have 500 people, 5,000 people, 30,000 people through, but working throughout the year and building on those relationships. I think to me, it all comes back down to relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the what's in it for them, obviously the impact, the positive impact that it's going to have on them if their businesses stay open and they reap the additional patronage and customers. Yeah, fantastic. So moving on next to, okay, we've got our fantastic concept. We're clear on our audience and our objectives. So how do we go about tackling the major planning of an event, whether it is an event of the scale that you've talked about, Kelly, a white night, or whether it's something, on a smaller scale, Troy? How do you go about, organising, planning and managing an entire event program? So looking at the logistics, whether you need an event manager, getting speakers or locking in other, support services. How do you go about that, Georgie? What's your process or, go-to tips?
Go-to tips. A good production schedule. It's probably the first one, and a good, having a clear understanding of what you are trying to achieve. So, if it is a small Mother's Day, I shouldn't say small, if it's a Mother's Day initiative that you're running, having your clear objectives. So, we want to engage the local wellbeing, the spa or the nail salon. So having a real clear objective of where you're heading with it, and good contact lists, again, good relationship building, so having all that as well. I might throw to Cal on this one. I feel there is a bit more around the logistics that Cal can probably share with us on this one.
Yeah, my one is budget. I think is working out for me, like even if there is a budget or if there's not a budget, that there's goodwill, so that's still a budget figure, right? That it's working out exactly what you've got to spend or what you need in kind, so that informs that you can stick to your concept to a degree and what you can agree to and not agree to. Because for me, the budget is like a to-do list, because it's all the things that you need to get locked in, whether it's for free or you're paying for it. Again, that local consultation, trying to engage local suppliers to support for cheaper. And for me, it's all about documentation. So as you were saying, Georgie, like the production schedule, like your whether it's an operations plan or an event plan, and that can be as simple as, event plans can be up to 100 pages, but they can also just be 2 pages, which includes exactly like what the event is, who's involved, what their job is, who's coming along to support you, exactly what time things are happening, and just basically trying to tick all those boxes to say, here it is, I've done it, and this is what we're sticking to. And for me, it's about establishing if you need a team, so whether it's your team, a committee, a couple of volunteers, just whatever it is, and making sure that you've got the right group of people together to do what you need to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Troy, did you want to make any comment there? Maybe even from a sponsorship perspective, and looking for getting additional partnership and sponsorship support. That's such a crucial part of running events.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's crossover here, which is a good thing. But if we're pulling, we call them event orders, the run sheets, whatever you want to call it. When we're pulling all that kind of content together, it all comes from the basis of, we do like one-page marketing plan. So it's got the purpose, the goals, the objectives, the consumer takeaways, all the takeaways in general, and the measures of success that we want to achieve from the event. And when we've fleshed all that kind of content out and fleshed how that might look in an operational sense, so whether it's needing all those different resources or needing a different venue or needing all those different things, we use these bases to identify what's within the realm of the association, what's within our current capacity, and what areas do we lack or what areas do we need extra resources towards. So when we do our one-page marketing plan and then the event order, it might, with all this, and we'll understand, okay, well, we have the funds to achieve all of this, but we want to also have a bit more value add. So the event order and the one-page marketing plan help us identify where there's opportunity for sponsorship to add that additional value if it's something that is outside of our means, sorry. But then also it outlines for us where our resources might be lacking and where we might need to bring in a contractor or someone to help us out on the evening, or even rope in our wonderful committee to do some volunteer hours. Good cost-saving mechanism. But yeah, no, I think definitely a lot can be said for a good one-page marketing plan that has an event order or run sheet or whatever you want to call it, responding to that to help identify where the areas of sponsorship opportunity or collaboration exists.
That's, some great insight there. Georgie, did you want to make, I guess you've had a lot of experience in this regard, like from, looking at, potential sponsors. And again, it's very much about relationships, early engagement. Did you want to make some comments or give some examples there?
Not on that one, to be honest. Sorry, Liz. I don't have anything further to add, but thank you.
No worries. What about you, Kelly? Have you had any or much experience with sponsorship development and any tips that you could potentially provide?
Yeah, I'm normally on the other end of sponsorship development in regards to, once the sponsors are secured, making sure that whatever's being promised is delivered. So I, from my operations and event experience, often like being involved in the initial what's being pitched to the sponsors to make sure that it's actually achievable. We've been in a number of situations where sponsors are promised a certain, whether it's an area on an event site or a specific activation, and it's actually not possible. So I think for me it's around making sure that whatever that sponsorship I suppose recognition is, that it's achievable, but also I suppose that it's ticking the boxes for the sponsor. So and I think it's also important that if you do get sponsorship, to make sure that it's acknowledged and recognised, especially when you're working with low to no budget. Like I've got an example, like, I live in a small town, they run a little autumn festival, they're very good at making sure that logos are on, whether it's posters or they're announced on the stage, because they appreciate, whether even it's just a local farm supply shop, supplying 20 hay bales for people to sit on in the car park, that everyone gets an acknowledgement, which I think is important regardless of what anyone's providing, to make sure that that acknowledgement's there.
I will add just one thing on that now that it's come to that Kelly followed up with that. I think it's important, if you are going out for sponsors, that your sponsors align with what you're trying to deliver as well. So, you might have someone throwing money at you, but it's just not the right fit. And if it's not the right fit, don't go, because the chances are, you might have a food supplier throwing money at you, but you're doing a food festival, and, you just don't want to burn those relationships.
And a good example of that is, I had someone ask me whether Melbourne Airport could be involved in the parade. And I was a little bit like, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to build a plane? Like, as far as how do we actually I don't want a banner that's just like Melbourne Airport, or that all of the t-shirts are branded. Like, it needed to fit in with the aesthetic of the parade. So unless they actually wanted a float that was kind of fitting in with the creative concept, I just didn't see how it could fit.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
point. That's fantastic. Well, I might just pause and I might just check in with the audience and just see if anyone wants to jump off mute and ask any questions or make any comments. No pressure. I've certainly got lots more to delve into, but please feel free to jump in if anyone wants to ask a question. Okay, I'll take
What a
that.
shy bunch.
I'll take that as a no, but next time I might come back and I might point some fingers or raise some names. So you've been warned. Okay, so I'll continue. Maybe we can lighten the questioning a little bit. I want to ask about, events are obviously about, good engagement, getting out, having fun. So you guys are in the best industry for that, right? For having fun. So tell me about that side of things. Like what's been the most funniest thing that has ever happened to you at an event? I'm looking at you, Georgie, because you've got a real cheeky look. I know you've got a story to share.
Oh.
The funnest thing that's ever happened to you running an event.
You've thrown me now, and I've only got the one example that I actually brought up last time and said I shouldn't repeat it because I thought it'd be a little inappropriate. But you know what? It is after 7, so I'm going to go there. So I was lucky enough one year to, many years actually, to work on the Moomba Parade as well with Kelly, and it was one of those events where you got up at what I used to refer to as stupid o'clock, which was I think about 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning or a Monday morning to go and get ready for the parade. That's it. So you drive into the city, black coffee in your hands, eyes hanging out of your head. And I was the first one on site, so I had to open up for everyone. And with the amount of people that would come through the parade.
Where was it, Georgie? Sorry, where was it exactly?
So it was Moomba Parade. So it was based out of Melbourne Grammar. So that was where the housing was. So everyone would come through there. And I guess the story goes that everyone needed to have a designated wristband. And I was sort of in charge of that area, and had all our suppliers come in and they had to get their wristbands. And then there was people walking around and someone turned around and said, if you need a wristie, you need to go and see Georgie. And it just, I never lived it down. So I continued to work with the team for about another 4 years. And I would just every year, it was the joke of the century when Georgie would rock up at 4 a.m. So that's my funny experience, but the camaraderie, I must say, and even just looking at the room here as well, and looking at Kelly and I probably go back 25 years. So it is quite a small industry, and even a lot of the names that are on the screen are ringing a lot of bells. So just that camaraderie of, being able to work together and enjoy those special moments, and I guess not being, a bit stage fright or anything like that when you do see someone like Shane Warne walk past to get a wristband. So yeah, it is a good industry. It's a very tiring industry, and I think it definitely takes its toll on a lot of us. So hence why I kind of maneuvered across maybe into economy, design and place, and moved away a little bit from events because those 4 a.m. starts are a killer.
Yeah, and just for something a little bit lighter and easier, placemaking and economic development, much easier, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Engagement, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if Kelly or Troy can top that story, but Troy, do you want to go next? Do you dare?
Sure. I definitely don't have a story like that. But I mean, it's a funny one, but then also have one that I was crying. So we'll go with, either. Resilience has been built, so that's great. So my first one, it was years ago. I was working for, I'm not going to name them, but an event company years ago. They're a big event and hospitality company, and we were doing a large event that was launching Melbourne Fashion Festival, I believe it was. And we had ordered all of these tickets, drink coupons and food coupons that come from New South Wales that were going to be given to all the attendees as they were coming through the gates, and they were essentially the currency for the evening to redeem food and drink. And it was the day of the event at like midday, and the tickets hadn't arrived from New South Wales yet. They were custom done. And we're starting to get a little bit worried calling the courier company, and no one could get any answers on anything. As it turns out, at the time, there was a big flood in New South Wales. It's not the most recent one, this was years ago. And they were stuck on an airplane in New South Wales, and they couldn't fly down because of the floods on the tarmac or something or other. So we had this event starting in about 4 hours with no way of doing any kind of coupon redemption or currency. And it had already been a fairly stressful lead up to that point. I think this was the point where the tears started, because it was like, what else could go wrong? But thankfully, if anyone needs to know, and I'm sure everyone's done this in the past, that Officeworks sell, like, you know, they did admit one tickets. And so I think they had like 4 or 5 different colors. So we bought 5 or 6 rolls of each of the different colors of the admit one tickets. And I was madly at my desk. We had a company stamp so that they could be somewhat unique. And I was tears running down my face. And I was literally stamping and rolling this big wheel of tickets in front of me and stamping and giving them off every time I did about 100 so they could be taken to the front of the gates. And it was, look, in hindsight, I can laugh about it now. But at the time, there were tears and it was horrendous.
Oh,
But I
my
love it
goodness.
best. I would never do anything else.
Yeah, well, it didn't put you off. It didn't put you off totally.
No.
That's good. That's great.
Yeah, just
Kelly,
built the
what about?
resilience character.
Absolutely. Toughened you up.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Kelly?
Yeah, this was, it's an interesting one. There's lots of stories, but I think my one, just, you know, if you touch on fatigue and sometimes, you know, the early starts and the late finishes and whatnot was, I can't even remember what event it was, but I know I was wearing 2 radios, and I radioed into the control at the operations centre, and then just without even thinking about it, I answered my own radio call from the other radio.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And then did you have a conversation with yourself?
Oh, yeah, I realised what I'd done, and it was like, go for Kelly. And it's like, I've just actually answered my radio call.
I also wonder how funny that would have been for everyone else on the wave line. It'd be like,
Yeah,
can you respond to yourself?
Oh, that is brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I love those examples. Okay, so back to more questions about running events. So I wanted to ask a question around, you know, where COVID was so long ago, right? Like three whole years ago. But in the midst of COVID, like, we all got used to doing things on Zoom, as we are doing now. And we ourselves, Mainstreet Australia, are now, you know, running our own online webinars. But just wondering, what are your thoughts on, you know, how do you get that right mix as a, you know, whether you're a non-profit or a government or other type of organisation, how do you get that right balance between, you know, doing events face-to-face, in person, and you know, having something different as part of your offer? What are your thoughts?
I'm happy to jump in if you don't mind, Liz. I'm happy to start that one.
Please.
So I kind of feel that at the moment there's a little bit of a, you know, COVID what? I think we've sort of moved on a little bit, to be honest. I think especially our main streets are definitely thriving. I think there's been some great benefits to COVID. I think that that idea of when we had the, you know, a lot of us, I'm assuming, are from Victoria, we had the 5-kilometre rule. I reckon a lot of us didn't even know our local cafes, and now we do. So I think there are some upsides to that. I think moving forward, though, I think people are ready to come back out. I think they're thriving to come back out, and I think our businesses and our traders associations want to take part in it. I feel that there is more of an appetite now because we did go through such a lockdown. Yeah, I think there's a bit of a change in the water, to be honest. I think there's definitely a balance, and there's definitely a need for meetings like this. You know, it's great that we didn't need to bring you into a venue, which would have been great because we would have supported a local business, but you know, we can't do that every time. So it is great to have the opportunity, even with business forums, and you know, business people are so busy. So to have that opportunity to actually engage with them after hours, after they've taken the kids to sports, or they've come home and it's 7 o'clock and they have a glass of wine while hubby's cooking dinner or something, that, you know, there's definitely a benefit to the online. But I do think, you know, in the way of events, I think events, personally for myself, it's what you experience, it's what you take away from it. It's different, you know, on a screen. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. And Kelly, what do you think? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, for me, for like presentations, as far as, and discussions and things like that, I think definitely having an online presence is useful in regards to accessibility, in regards to being able to, you know, like say tonight, if we were based in Sydney Road in a venue, for instance, there might be people who are regionally that may not have made the decision to come. So I do think definitely online has a benefit, but, you know, similar to George, I think for an actual event delivery model. I mean, and especially because my background is public outdoor events, I need public to run them effectively. But certainly as a planning mechanism, it means that I've got a lot more reach with staff and being able to engage people, because my team can be doing the whole planning process and only need to be in Melbourne for the actual event day. So it definitely offers more scope in regards to, who I can offer opportunities to, because they don't necessarily need to, conveniently have to come to an office 5 days a week that needs to be near the house.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. And Troy, I might just go to the next question if that's okay. And because I'm just having a look at the time and we're already close to time. And I've got 2 final closing questions that I'd like to ask. And then I might just check back in with everyone else. And if you've got anything else to ask, please do put your comments or question in the chat, or get ready to speak up and ask the question. But Troy, maybe you can just leave our audience with some real tangible and practical tips. So most of the people here tonight are either from another business chamber or trader group like yourself. So what are the 3 best tips that you would give our audience that they could potentially go away and tomorrow maybe implement when they're looking at their next event? What are the 3 top things for you?
No pressure, obviously.
Yeah, no, not at all. Do you want to do a drum roll?
Yeah, definitely so. No, I think what's important, especially from a business association or traders group perspective, is to understand that whilst we collectively do as much as we can throughout the year with whatever funds or resources we've got, there is maybe some limitations there that need to be worked with. So I think, on reflection of the Sydney Road Brunswick Association, we have a 5-year business plan and annual marketing plans that get updated annually or 5-yearly. So one tip I would have is, and one thing I've been rolling out for the association, is to always, with every activation, it doesn't need to be a massive event. I think an event can be of any scale. It can be a walking tour. It can be a street hopping activation with this artist or roaming talent, whatever it is, that everything should have a 1-page marketing plan that outlines the purpose, the goals, the objectives, and the consumer or participant takeaways that you want people to take away with them, having had that experience in whatever form it is. But then also in those 1-page plans, create a connection back to the larger 5-year plan or the annual marketing plan, so that when it comes time to reporting, which I'm sure other business associations like myself have to do on a quarterly basis, there is real links that can be easily and quickly created for ease of reporting and ease of, I suppose, measuring of success. To say, well, to do this overall objective for the association, we managed to deliver these events or activations that responded to these 1-page marketing plans. This was the purpose, these were the goals, these were the objectives. And then importantly, on top of that, having what I would call a measures of success page. So when we lead into an event or whatever we want to call it, we develop a measures of success document that outlines what we deem as success for that event or that activation. So whether it be website clicks or EDM subscribers, if you've got consumer mailing lists to build on, or ticket sales or offer redemption with the businesses. So if you've created some kind of offering that the consumer can take with them and redeem, tracking that and monitoring it, so that when it comes time to reporting its effectiveness, you've got actual results to quickly and easily pull together and build proof for future events. Like Georgina was saying previously, if you want to, sell on the dream, you've got hard statistics and information that you can build off.
Amazing. That's awesome. Georgie, what about you?
Yeah, look, mine was pretty easy. I've got 3. So I've got clear communication with your stakeholders. For me, that's 101. The next one is all in one, but I'm going to repeat it 3 times. Data. It's the story behind everything. Crowd numbers, photos, videos, testimonials, all the stuff that you're going to need to sell that vision, but not only back to your businesses, again, as a traders association, to actually sell that back to your councils as well. Make do their job for them, because a lot of the times, and I work for a council, but a lot of the times we don't do a lot of that. I'm lucky enough that I've got an amazing team, and I do really embed that into their heads, you know, get videos, get kids laughing on the street. Those moments are priceless, and they tell a million stories, huge crowd shots, any opportunities like that. And my key one is definitely very similar to Troy's, which is following up on any sort of feedback. So again, making sure that you're engaging the feedback, engaging your traders and your suppliers, whether they're local artists, and getting that feedback, because again, those stories are priceless when you're going back out to sell the vision.
Fantastic. Awesome. Kelly, what about you? What are your three tips for our audience tonight?
Yeah, well, again, I come up from a delivery point of view. So my thing is talk to people, because you never know the skill set of your neighbours. You know, they might be a butcher, but they also might have a daughter or a son or whatnot who's a graphic designer. So engage and talk to people and understand the skill set that you're surrounded with before you kind of try and outsource those skills. Document everything, make sure you've got a backup plan, and just make sure you've got everything written down. And my one is set realistic expectations, so to make sure that you can actually deliver what you've set out or what you've sold. So I've been in situations where someone's like, we're going to do this, and I'm like, I don't think you can. I don't like having to be that person. So setting those really clear expectations and making sure you can afford it, you can deliver it, and it's going to get the images that that George is talking about, that you've got that data to sell it in.
Yeah, I fully agree, Kelly. I think under promise and over deliver. That's the way to go. Awesome. Thank you so much. So in closing, and this question that I'm going to put to you as a final question is a question that we'll be asking of all of our panelists going forward over the next 12 months as part of our night shift sessions. And we're hoping to develop a bit of a great picture of our main streets in Australia and what makes them so fabulous. So this is a question that's a little bit different and separate to this topic that we're discussing tonight. But we want to know, panelists, what is your favourite main street anywhere around the world, and why? We want to know what makes it so fantastic. Georgie, I'm looking at you.
Going to throw me in the deep end first. Yeah, no, I've got it. I don't actually personally need to think of this one. So I obviously have a Greek background. So my favourite is an island in Greece that's called Lefkada. It's just off the mainland. You can drive to it. So it's obviously got a beautiful beaches, but not only that, for me, it's the main street. So they have a gorgeous piazza area where I reckon you could fit half a soccer field in there. And it's just full of outdoor dining, festoon linings, umbrellas, the smell of coffee, the smell of, Greek meat cooking, people drinking ouzo, random people just dancing because there's a musician in the quarters. So for me, it's, and that's on a Tuesday. Not even in summer. So having that experience of, again, I'm going to throw to it. I was hoping I wasn't going to say it, but no vehicles, feeling that sense of safety in a space where, you can sit there with your kids and have an ice cream and they can run around and they feel safe. So that's mine. Thank you.
Love it. That's taken me away. back to the Zoom call. Troy, what about you?
Mine is actually my hometown, Castlemaine, which is 1.5 hours away from Melbourne. And I believe not too far from where Georgie grew up in Bendigo. If my deep diving serves me right.
And where we held our conference last year.
Correct.
Our regional conference, yeah.
But for me, the reason is because it's, I think, the epitome of community in so many ways. So it is full of small makers and small business and people kicking and doing their dreams and taking them where they want to be. And I think, it's progressed and it's ever developing. It's changing in ways that's responding to the people that are coming to the town. And I think I'll probably stop there. I'll keep talking. But Castlemaine is my response.
Love it. So we've gone from Greek islands to regional Victoria. Kelly, where are you taking us?
Well, I had two. So regional. So I said I wasn't from small town, but I'm not from this small town. But my regional Victorian town was Malden.
Yes. Beautiful.
Mainly because they've kept the old charm of all the buildings, but they've got and sort of new people coming into town, and there's like old shops, you know, new things coming in, but I really like it. It's just a quirky place. And my other one is Salamanca in Hobart. And probably for similar reasons, scenic, charm, look and feel, really good food and beverage options. Yeah.
Amazing market, amazing street market. Yeah. Fantastic. Love all of those suggestions. So thank you so much for sharing those. And also thank you so much for being on our panel and also being on our very first night shift session for 2023. I will look at wrapping up, but before I do, I can see that there's no questions in the chat. But as I'm wrapping up, if anyone wants to jump in, please take yourself.
Jumped in.
Oh, is there one? Can you read it out?
Yeah.
Do you want to read it out, Troy?
Yeah, let me, oh God, hang on,
Please.
it disappeared on me.
Go for it.
Does the panel have any tips on activating empty shop fronts for events, or is it simply too difficult to align current owners, future owners, and letting agents to make their space available on a set date?
That's a great question.
The
And
beefy
I
question.
love that question. And don't give up is what I say. So we've at Wyndham, we had an initiative probably about 2 years ago where we had, again, we're pretty lucky. We don't have a huge amount of vacancies, but we did have one key vacancy and we kept on ringing the real estate agent. They were like, no. In the end, just keep persisting. It's absolutely worth it. And you'll find that the chances are that empty tenancy, after you've activated it, will probably become leased. And I think there's a lot of history in that as well. A good model to look at is Renew. So Renew's doing some great work in that space around the Docklands, around Ackland Street. Some great examples. If you're wanting to follow up, we're more than happy to share some information on that. But yeah, just continue working with the agents. Try and get them on your side. Obviously, again, you're selling a vision. Obviously, if you are working, you are Monash Council, I can see there, Rob. If you're working for council, obviously there's more chance that they're going to buy into having a lease agreement with you guys for 6 months on that empty tenancy as well. Definitely lots of models, but I'm conscious of time as well, but more than happy to chat further if you'd like to, Rob.
Thanks, Georgie. And it's a great question. It's a great segue into the topic of our next night shift session, which is actually on that very question, Rob. So we've got our next session coming up in April, and the topic is from vacant to vibrant. So how do we ensure that we can decrease the vacancy rates on our main streets? So that is the next topic for our night shift session. So please come along to that, Rob. And I can see we have another comment or message. I will just have a look at that okay, it's just a thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming. Johan, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of you for attending. We do hope that you enjoyed the session. We'll be following up tomorrow with a survey. Please complete that. I'll also be following up with just a summary checklist on how to run an event and a calendar. So we hope you get a lot of use out of all of that. But please do fill out the survey and let us know how we went and what else you would like to see covered as part of this series going forward. Thank you so much for your time. I'm Liz Joldeski. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.